Operations with layers. Hi guys, today we will continue to learn how to work with layers and do new practical exercises in order to master this topic. First, let's take this file. As you can see, different parts of the image are on different layers. At the very bottom there is a layer that simulates crumpled paper. On the next layer there is a city landscape. Then there is a girl, and above them there are text layers. And now I want to show you how we can change the position of these layers. We talked a lot about this last time, but now we'll discuss it in a little more detail. For example, last time we talked about how you can just point the mouse cursor on the desired layer. Press the left mouse button and drag this layer to where you would like. Well, for example, I'm going to drag this layer with the girl, so that the inscription is behind the figure of the girl. You can also do this using keyboard shortcuts, Ctrl and square brackets on the keyboard. For example, now I hold down Ctrl and press the left square bracket, and you see, for every time I press the square bracket, the layer moves one step back. We can't go below the background layer, because this layer is locked, and you can see it by this lock icon. We'll talk about what a layer lock is in a few minutes. But for now, let's get back to our layer movement. Sometimes there are so many layers, it can be counted in dozens. Such a step-by-step movement of layers can be inconvenient. And for example, you need to move the layer either to the very top or to the very bottom. In this case, the keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus Shift and the corresponding square brackets will help you. Let's say I want to move the girl image to the very top, so I press Ctrl plus Shift and right bracket, and that's how the girl turned out to be at the top again. So Ctrl and left square bracket is down, and Ctrl and right square bracket is up. And if at the same time we also press Shift, then it will be either the very bottom or the very top. But what if we need to move something that is on the several layers at once? For example, the text which I have is located on 4 layers, each word on a separate layer, and also such a white background for the text. And what if I want to move all these 4 layers at once, at the same time? For example, place them above the layer with the girl. There are different ways to do this. The first way that I will show you now is used in cases when you want to apply some action to layers only once. This means you are not constantly working with a group of some layers, but now you need to do some action with them. Then this way will work. So, how is this done? We select one layer and hold down Shift and select the other layers that we need at the same time. For example, I use this method, and now I have all the text layers selected. After that, I hold down the left mouse button and move these layers wherever I want. For example, I move them above the layer with a girl. If I want to cancel the operation, then I press Ctrl plus Z. Here I went back, and when I select some other layer, the selection is automatically removed. But there are such situations, and they are quite common, when you are constantly making some operations with the same group of layers. In this case, you can link these layers or merge them into a group. For example, I want to move all the text elements around the document at the same time. Of course, I can select them, as I did before. This is the way I will have the whole title move, although it consists of different elements, each of which is on a separate layer and can be moved simultaneously. But for example, if I select only one layer, I will move only this part of the title. And let's say I want to move this title somewhere. To see how it looks, I will do it maybe more than once. Then I select all the necessary layers and click this button here, Link Layers, or I press the right mouse button and select here Link Layers. It's the same thing, this icon appears here. Now if I click on one of these elements, then look, I have the whole block of text moving all together, the entire title. Thus, every time I want to return to the text block again and move it somewhere, all the text layers will move at the same time. Meanwhile, we can swap text elements inside these linked layers. For example, I can take this layer and drag it up. You can see that my white color has become higher than black, just like that, and back. But if I want to move the location of these 4 layers all together in the layers panel again, I will not succeed. To do this, it must be all selected. And in order not to do this every time, if we perform some operations more or less regularly with some group of layers, it is better to merge them into this group. We select all the layers we need and click either this icon to create a group, or click the right mouse button and select Create a Group of layers. We can name this group Okay, now I have a group that I quite define myself as a text group, which I can move entirely. Look, I take it, and I immediately have the whole text move above the girl. At the same time, I can also do other various operations. For example, I can change the transparency of all elements at the same time. Here we have such a parameter. It's called opacity. When it is 100%, it means that the element or elements are completely non-transparent. Well, let's reduce it. We'll get a more transparent option. You can move and select the indicator you need. One of the main advantages in creating groups is that there will be a lot of layers in professional work, and you'll just get tired of scrolling through this entire palette of layers to find the layer you need. You'll have to constantly stretch it. This is very inconvenient. But when you have thematic layers combined into groups, it will be much easier for you to work. By the way, remember now this moment about the creation of group, because this will be the part of the homework. And also, when you create a group through this icon, you are not asked to create, or rather you are not asked to set the name of the group. A new group will simply be created. But if you want to delete it when you no longer need it, then you can just click the delete layer icon and it will be deleted. Or let's say maybe you want to edit something to this group. Let me get her back. For example, I want to put this girl there. Then I take it and drag it here to the group icon. And now I have a girl in this group. And I could, for example, move something else here. Let's edit a city landscape here. Like that. You just need to swap it with a girl. And now I have this group. How should I call it? So, let's call it the girl in town. If at some point you decide to get rid of a group, you can right click and select ungroup layers. And now everything becomes as it was without the group. I will go back by pressing Ctrl+Z. So, this is the first part of your homework. You need to create two groups like this. It is desirable that the group with a girl is below the group with the text. It seems to me that it looks better this way, but I don't insist on it. Let's move on. We have two groups and a background. Background is usually the name of the first layer when you create any document. And here you can always see the lock icon. While this lock is here, your actions with the background will be limited. This means that you, for example, cannot move it higher and cannot place any layer below the background. If you need to do this for some reason, then you need to unlock this background. In order to do this, you need to double click on the layer and you will see the dialog box that prompts you to set the name of the new layer. Let's do it. Now the layer is unlocked and we can move it. For example, like this. I moved it to a group with a girl and it is higher than the other layers. Now I'm going back. Let's say I could take the text and place it below the layer with the paper. I can't see it now because the layer with the paper covers everything. But if I make it transparent, then we will see that there is a text below this layer. Now I will take it all back. This will be the second part of your homework. You need to unlock this layer. Let's look at other blocking options. They are all in this block. Let's apply it to a layer with a girl. For example, this one. It blocks transparent pixels. Why do we need it? Sometimes you need to paint over something in the image and somehow do it carefully and without unnecessary problems. Let's choose this lock. Now we can see the lock icon on this layer. I take the brush tool. The color can be selected in the basic color palette, which we will talk about in the following lessons. Well, the slider moves up and down. Choose the color range and select the color you need. I choose this one, for example. And now I'm taking a brush. I can adjust its size using square brackets. The right bracket increases the size of the brush and the left one reduces. To make it clear to you, I will disable the other layers. Here we have a girl on transparent pixels and I would like to dye her hair. And so, look, I draw along the contour and the hair is painted over. But the transparent pixels on the background are not painted over. So I could, let's say, dye her hair if I wanted to do it. But it seems to me, to be honest, it's not really necessary here. Therefore, I will cancel these actions. So, let's cancel this lock. Just cancel it here and the lock icon has disappeared. We click once and it is no longer here. The next lock, on the contrary, doesn't allow you to paint over something. I'm trying to paint, but the program, as you can see, tells me that the layer is fixed. That is, I can't paint here. Cancel. The next parameter is motion lock. I take a move tool and unfortunately I can't move this layer in any way. This protects the layer from accidental movements of some kind. If you're afraid that this may happen, this can be useful when you are making a design layout and there are some very precise parameters there, and you are afraid to shift something. We will cancel it too. The next one is a lock on automatically attachment to editing areas and frames. Well, this is generally a very rarely used thing. And finally, a complete lock, which doesn't allow anything to be done with this layer at all. Well, cancel that too. That's all I wanted to tell you about the locks. The most important thing, of course, is to be able to remove the lock from the background layer, and let's see what we got. Right now we have a file with an unlocked background layer and two groups. And of course, I hope that you will remember all the ways to move layers and lock them. We will continue studying layers and make such a vintage postcard, which will help us understand all the features of working with layers. As you can see, there is a background and three elements. Turn the eye icon on and off to see. There is an inscription and a small tweak, which we have on the left. Three additional elements. And of course, it is obvious that this whole composition was created by duplicating various objects. And let's see how it can be done. We'll be talking now about how to copy layers. There are 4 ways to duplicate layers. And let's start. To begin with, we will try to copy this layer with flowers, which we have at the top of our image. By the way, if I want to look at it and turn off all the other layers, I point the mouse cursor on the eye, hold down Alt and click, and I only have this layer left. And we are going back. By the way, periodically, like now, I will repeat something of what we have already talked about, because as experience shows, these moments remain better in the memory of those who study Photoshop. So obviously, we need to copy these roses again in order to place them at the bottom. So I take Move tool and click on roses. I have activated a layer with roses, and now in order to copy it, I just drag this layer onto this icon. It's the second one on the right here. And I have a copy of a layer. Now this layer is placed exactly above the layer that we have. Therefore, we don't see any changes. But if you take the Move tool, then you see that we have roses here. There are not only roses here. Let's call them girlands of flowers. And we can move these roses down. But if we want our images to be harmonious, we should mirror these roses. And now, although we are currently learning how to copy layers, I will show you one of the elements of image transformation. This will diversify our topic. So I press Ctrl+T, and now we have this frame, which means that the free transform mode has been activated. I press the right mouse button and select Flip Vertically. That's it, the picture mirrored vertically. After that, I can double click in any free space or click Enter. It depends on your Photoshop version. It's just enough to click on a free place. In other versions, you may need to click Enter. Well, that's it. It was a small digression. We copied this layer by dragging it onto the icon. How could it have been done differently? The second way, we have a tweak and we need to move it to the side. We find the layer with a tweak. I click on it and the layer on which it is placed is activated. If you have doubts, turn on, turn off the eye. Make sure that it is the layer you need. And the second way is to use the Layers panel. Layer, Duplicate Layer, and click OK. Similarly, we have a layer with a leaf on top, and we can move it here. And now we repeat the same thing. That was done before. Press Ctrl+T, click the right mouse button, and now we choose Flip Horizontally. Mirrored, move to the right place. And we now have 2 tweaks. Next, we will need to copy these 2 tweaks too, and move them down. Let's merge them into one layer, so that it would be more convenient for us, in order not to copy each tweak separately. Here is the tweak, and the tweak 1, and we will merge them into one common layer. There is such an operation that allows you to merge the layer with the layer that is one step below it. In this case, a tweak 1 will be merged with a tweak, and to do it, we need to press Ctrl+E, or we can select Merge Layers in the Layers panel. So we can select it or press Ctrl+E, and we have one common layer, which is called a tweak. And now, if I turn off an icon, you see 2 tweaks disappear at once. Now we have to duplicate this layer with 2 tweaks. Press Ctrl plus J, the layer is duplicated, a tweak copy. Here they are, the tweaks we have. And again, we'll use free transform. Press Ctrl plus T, flip vertically. We put them in the right place and click Enter. Please note that the tweaks are not very nicely arranged right now. They go to the bottom garland of flowers. And to make it more harmonious, we can take this layer, click the left mouse button and drag it below the garland layer. And you see, my tweaks seems to be peeking out now. Here they are. They are placed a little lower. We can place them in some more beautiful way. We can do the same with the upper tweaks. If we decide that we need to place them somehow below, then we will take and drag something here, so that they peek out from under this garland. We still have one more way to duplicate layers. Let's take a look at it. Take this layer, for example, and select Layers, Duplicate Layer. And look, we have a window here, in which, on the one hand, we can give a name to one layer. On the other hand, we can choose which document this layer is copied to. But now, and as always, by default it is copied to the document that I have open. It is Vintage one. But if you click this arrow, then all the files that are open will disappear, plus a new file. I also have a file without a name that I created just before. And let's choose it and see what happens. So, a document without a name, layer 1 copy, and click OK. Now let's look at the document without a name. These flowers were copied here. Thus, if necessary, you can send some elements to other documents. At the same time, you can even create new ones right away. Well, everything is so obvious there that I won't show it step by step now. I think if you want to, you can figure out how to do it. Create a duplicate of a layer. And if you choose a new one here, then you understand everything intuitively. Okay. Or rather cancel. Let's get back to our composition. If we look at what we are striving for, we will see that in addition to flowers, there are also, I don't even know how to call them, stretching colors, maybe. The background is not pure white, but has some color, and now we'll try to reproduce it. And now I want to draw your attention to an important rule of Photoshop. It is better that each new element is on a new layer, because this is what allows you to work with your image as conveniently as possible, edit as conveniently as possible, and it's just a must-have. And as you understand, we are smoothly moving onto the topic of creating new layers. We have learned to duplicate them, and now we'll create our own layers, and we'll edit the color transitions on them with a brush. Any operation in Photoshop can be done in different ways, and creating layers is no exception. So, the first way is to click this icon, and this will create a new layer above the layer that is currently highlighted. Well, so look something like this, but this layer must be lower than the layers with flowers. That's why we drag it here, just above the background layer. We certainly won't make a mistake. It will be at the bottom. We'll draw with a brush, create our own image. So we are creating new layers in order to create something new on them. For convenience, so that everything is in a single color scheme, I will use the eyedropper tool. Well, here it is. You can select it by pressing I. I will click here, and so I got a color that was reflected here in the color palette. When I click, I choose the color that will be used. And now I take the brush tool. The brush tool has a lot of settings. In fact, we'll analyze them in great detail over time. Right now, only two things are important to us: a soft and hard brush. A soft brush gives, let's say, stroke with such blurred edges, which is what we need now. This is the first. The second thing, this is important to us, is the size of the brush. It can be adjusted either here, by moving the slider, or you can click the square brackets left and right, decreasing and decreasing the size. And now I'm painting over the layer. You see, I draw a semi-shadow. Basically, I can copy the same layer and mirror it, and make the same image at the bottom. But it seems to me that in the particular case, it is much easier to just draw the same thing. That's how I created this shadow. Now I want to edit greenish shades to this shadow. Theoretically, I could do it on the same layer. But what if I want to remove this shade later? It could be quite difficult for me. So I will create another layer. And this time I will create it using a keyboard shortcut. This will be a keyboard shortcut Shift plus Ctrl plus N. You can see it in the Layers panel if you select New. Click here you can set the name of a layer exactly as we did before. The indicators that we see below we will consider later. Click OK, and we have another new blank layer. Now we take an eyedropper and take a sample of this light green color. Again, we return to the brush tool and added a little green color here. And look why it was necessary to do this on a separate layer. Right now I have a green color. In my opinion, it turned out to be too active. Therefore, since I have it on a separate layer, I can edit it separately. I go to the opacity and reduce the opacity of the layer to point that I need. Here, for example, like this, I can do the same on another layer with a shadow, and maybe I will need another percentage here. Thus, creating new layers and placing image elements on different layers give us maximum editing capabilities. Well, that means maximum creativity. We discussed with you how to duplicate layers, create new layers, and also try to transform images a little. And we talk a little about the brush tool. I will pay attention to the layers and how they are created. So, you need to duplicate the necessary layers in a similar way. Merge two layers with a tweak into one and edit tones on new layers using a brush. And of course, don't forget to save your work in PSD format. It was Peter Romanov and AIM School. See you next time.